What do y'all know about skinwalkers? You believe they're real? I found 3 stories from real people who managed to survive encounters with bloodthirsty skinwalkers. The first story, Amber Sullivan. It was an unusually quiet afternoon when I awoke 10 minutes before my alarm. The silence in the empty house, my husband being away on a business trip, feeling almost oppressive. Rising from bed with a heavy limp due to my prosthetic right leg, I noticed our loyal dog, Buddy, unusually restless at the foot of the bed. Buddy, typically my calm companion, began growling with an intensity that set my nerves on edge. At first, I assumed he was simply caught in a deep dream, but then he bolted toward the old cellar, barking furiously. I followed his frantic lead and carefully descended the creaking wooden steps into the dim space. Once I switched on the light, I surveyed the room filled with dusty boxes, forgotten tools, and battered furniture, a scene that, despite its age, held no obvious sign of intrusion. Buddy's anxious sniffing and persistent alertness only deepened my unease, even though I attempted to soothe him with gentle strokes. I tried to dismiss the incident as a misinterpretation of stray noises from outside, blaming my imagination for his odd behavior. Soon after, I ascended the stairs just as my alarm began to ring, signaling it was time to pick up my daughter, Emma, from school. On the short 2-block journey under the relentless summer heat, each step a challenge on my crutches, I steeled myself against the lingering dread. When Emma cheerfully asked if she could play with Buddy at home, I reassured her softly, cautioning not to disturb him too much despite the unsettled feeling that clung to me. Upon our arrival, Buddy greeted us at the door in a peculiar manner, standing unnervingly still and watching us with an intense, unblinking stare. His fixed, penetrating gaze made him seem almost like a stranger, rather than the familiar pet I had always known, while Emma remained blissfully unaware, urging, "Come on, Buddy, let's go." I couldn't shake the disquiet gnawing at my gut. Standing in the hallway, I watched him with increasing apprehension as he continued his silent vigil, as if waiting for something I couldn't decipher. I half assumed that he was silently pleading for more food, or perhaps atoning for his earlier agitation. Later that evening, as I began preparing dinner, Emma joined me downstairs while Buddy trailed behind, not with his usual playful bounce, but with a chilling, relentless gaze. Just as I set the table, the entire house plunged into darkness. The lights flickered once before dying completely. I hastily retrieved a flashlight from a nearby drawer and swept its beam through the inky blackness, which revealed Buddy's solemn face at the edge of the kitchen. My heart pounded furiously as I made my way back to the old cellar, expecting the blackout to be due to a simple blown fuse. However, a faint, muffled sound emanating from the depths of the cellar whispered that something was profoundly amiss. The unsettling noise suggested that someone or something was moving in the darkness, an idea that both chilled and compelled me to act. Even though every instinct urged me to escape with Emma, I paused, wondering if the sound might merely be an echo of my stressed imagination. After securing Emma's room by locking the door and instructing Buddy, now strangely silent, to stand guard, I resolved to investigate further, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The moment I reached the top of the cellar stairs, its beam fell upon stacks of old boxes and furniture until, suddenly, something on the floor caught my eye. Cautiously, I stepped forward and with mounting horror discovered that it was Buddy. His body grotesquely mangled and his fur stained with dried blood. I stood frozen, my mind reeling as I struggled to comprehend the grisly sight before me. Then, a piercing scream from upstairs shattered the silence. sending a surge of panic through every fiber of my being. Hurriedly, despite the throbbing pain in my leg, I rushed upstairs to Emma's room, finding the door firmly shut and her cries muffled on the other side. Desperately, I pounded on the door, calling, "Sweetheart, it's me, open up," as I exerted all my strength until the door finally yielded. When it swung open, the horrifying scene that unfolded made my blood run cold. There, standing in the threshold, was not the familiar Buddy, but a twisted, inhuman imitation with a ghastly, contorted grimace and an unnatural, upright posture. It clutched Emma's arm in its jaws, leaving her frozen in terror with wide, uncomprehending eyes. I tried to move forward, but the creature's gaze shifted to the arm I held, as though it were pondering whether to inflict further damage. Without warning, the abomination released Emma's arm, allowing her to collapse weakly to the floor before scrambling onto all fours, as if defying natural order. In a single, brutal moment, the creature sneered in a way that mocked my despair, then latched onto Emma's waist and leaped through a shattered window. I watched in paralyzed horror as glass cascaded into countless fragments and Emma's piercing screams faded into the distance, leaving me utterly helpless. Falling to my knees with my crutches clattering aside, I attempted to crawl toward the broken window, driven by a desperate urge to follow Emma. But deep inside, I knew it was futile. The horrifying image of Emma being dragged away by that monstrous shape seared itself into my memory forever. When the police finally arrived, I found myself incapable of forming a coherent account of the night's unspeakable events. Every detail, however absurd it sounded, tumbled from my lips as I recounted the terror that had overtaken us. They scoured the house and the old cellar, discovering Buddy's gruesome remains. Yet no trace of Emma or the creature was found outside. The officers tried to console me, promising search teams and endless efforts to locate my daughter, but their eyes betrayed profound disbelief. Some even insinuated that I had lost my mind, suspecting that I might have harmed Emma during a bout of madness. Days turned into weeks as the search yielded nothing, a chilling silence that ultimately led to the case being abandoned. Now I reside in a psychiatric hospital, the stigma of insanity clinging to me despite the undeniable truth of what occurred. The doctors claim it is for my own safety to shield me from the haunting memories, yet I know that Emma's abduction was all too real. My husband ceased visiting, unable to bear the thought that I might have lost touch with reality. Every day I am tormented by the thought of where Emma might be and whether she is still alive. At times I try to convince myself that it was all a terrible illusion, but the relentless terror refuses to be dismissed. I wonder if the haunting began before that dreadful night, or was triggered by it. The second story, Jaden Parker. It all started with an unexpected invitation from Cody, one of our most reserved friends, who proposed a weekend retreat at his secluded cabin in the remote hills. Cody, a meticulous man who rarely shared details of his private sanctuary, made the invitation all the more surprising. We initially assumed his proposal was simply a chance to escape the clamor of the city and enjoy a brief respite, yet an odd undercurrent in his demeanor, an almost excited intensity, hinted at something beyond a simple getaway. Reluctantly, we agreed, viewing the trip as a rare opportunity we might never have again. The journey took several hours along winding roads until we finally arrived at the cabin, nestled deep within a dense forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. The cabin, isolated in a forgotten corner of the hills, exuded an eerie charm amid towering pines and misty glades. Upon our arrival, Cody immediately urged us to explore the surrounding woods, though our weariness from the long drive convinced us to postpone the adventure until the next day. His subtle disappointment did not escape our notice, as we had always seen him as a reserved soul, seldom eager for outdoor escapades. That night, after settling in with a modest meal and a few drinks, laughter mingled with an inexplicable tension whenever I caught Cody's unwavering, scrutinizing gaze. Every time our eyes met, I felt as though he were silently analyzing me, his stare both unnerving and unyielding. I tried to brush off the feeling with forced laughter, even as his persistent glances left me unsettled. Despite his repeated suggestions to venture out into the moonlit woods, we decided to remain inside the cabin, seeking comfort in its familiar interior. However, later that night, as I lay awake with the sensation of being watched, I realized that the terror of that fateful encounter was far from over. In the dim silence of the cabin's night, I sensed an ominous presence lurking. A reminder that some nightmares refuse to remain confined to folklore. I could not shake the feeling that our retreat had inadvertently awakened forces beyond our control. As the hours dragged on, every creak of the old wooden floors seemed to echo the unspeakable horrors that had already shattered my life. It was in that unsettling quiet that I finally understood. The true horror was only beginning, and nothing would ever be the same again. His eyes seemed to glow in the dark, reflecting the little light that filtered through the window. He didn't blink or move a muscle. He just stared at me, and I couldn't help feeling unnerved by my old friend I'd known since childhood. I looked down, trying to ignore him and leaning back so I wouldn't seem paranoid, even though maybe Cody had had too many drinks the night before. The next day, I woke up to the screams of my friends at 4 a.m., and for a brief moment, I felt relieved that Cody wasn't watching me this time. However, when I stepped into the dining room, I found everyone in a state of panic. One of them, Chase, looked pale and was shaking as he asked, "Hey man, you okay?" We couldn't find Cody or Logan anywhere. It was then that one of our buddies filled me in on everything. Just a few minutes earlier, someone had woken up to a strange noise and discovered that our friends had vanished, even though all their stuff was still in the cabin. We waited for a while, but they never came back. If they'd just gone for a walk, why hadn't they called? Why would anyone be out at that ungodly hour without any of their belongings? So we decided to head into the pine forest to look for them, and soon enough, we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from deep among the trees. It was Logan's voice. We ran toward the sound, but what we found when we arrived was more horrifying than we ever imagined. Logan's body lay on the ground, brutally gutted. Even more disturbing was that, judging by the state of his body, he had been dead for several hours, which made it impossible to understand how we had heard his screams so clearly. In the distance, through the tangled trees, I spotted a figure moving quickly. It was Cody, heading deeper into the forest. We called out his name, but he didn't respond. He just kept going, as if he hadn't even seen Logan's lifeless form. We started following him at full speed, completely oblivious to the trap we were walking into. As we moved further into the darkening forest, we began to lose track of Cody, and the air grew thick with the smell of damp earth mixed with something unmistakably like blood. Honestly, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I was terrified. There was no way I could stay another second in that eerie place. And neither could any of my friends, but we couldn't just leave Cody behind, not after what had happened to Logan. Suddenly, the sound of snapping branches all around us put us on high alert, and it was clear that something big was moving through the trees. In a heartbeat, Cody reappeared, but this time he wasn't walking like a normal person at all. He was moving in a spider-like manner, his limbs contorted as he glided along the forest floor. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. Something was horribly wrong. Before we could even react, Cody leapt on one of our friends, sinking his teeth into his neck. Blood splattered everywhere as Chase crumpled to the ground, dead in seconds, and before I knew it, I was running deeper into the woods with Chase's agonized screams echoing behind me, begging me not to leave him. None of this made any sense. The guy who looked exactly like Cody had just bitten Chase's neck and killed him. There was no way those screams were really his. Suddenly, a strange being appeared in our path. A creature that wasn't Cody at all, but something entirely unrecognizable, with pale skin and empty eyes that made it look like a nightmare come to life. I've always been a sucker for urban legends, and this thing reminded me of that creepy Skinwalker photo that's been all over the internet. We didn't have time to stop and think. All we knew was we had to run, and run fast. Every time I glanced back, I couldn't see anything. Only the sound of its pursuit grew louder and closer. By a stroke of luck, I reached the cabin and found an old truck waiting, but when I got there, I realized I was alone. Chase was nowhere to be found. I didn't even want to think about what might have happened to him, but then I heard it, a desperate voice, unmistakably Chase's, coming from the woods, yelling for me to wait and not leave him behind. In that split second, I had to make a decision. The thing was mimicking the voices of my friends. And what if that voice really was Chase's? I couldn't risk it, because if I was wrong, I'd lose him forever. I fired up the truck's engine and sped off as fast as I could, not daring to look back for fear of catching sight of Cody or that other monstrous creature chasing me. Honestly, what I was really scared of was seeing Chase and knowing I'd made the wrong call. The road back to town seemed to stretch on forever. But eventually I reached a safer area where I could pull over and try to piece together what had happened. I tried calling the police, but my phone had no signal out there, leaving me stranded with only my guilt and fear as company. It hit me then, like a bucket of ice water. I'd left my friends behind, with no idea what fate had befallen them. I felt a crushing weight of guilt and terror, yet I couldn't bring myself to go back, not when I knew what I'd seen in that forest wasn't of this world. I had survived that night, and as messed up as that was, it was better than dying like the rest of them. When I finally managed to get through to the authorities and told them everything, I knew they wouldn't believe a word I said. To my shock, they mentioned that similar reports had come in from around the cabin before, in an area where disappearances were common. Apparently, locals were more open to the idea of these things, though they still chalked them up as mysterious vanishings. They only recovered Cody's corpse, which made them suspect that the voice I'd heard might not have been Chase's at all. Even now, I still wonder if I made the right decision, though under the circumstances there really was no right choice. I just made the choice that left me here, alive, telling you this story. Oh, and one more thing. When they found Cody's body, the police actually suspected me for a moment, because they discovered that he'd been dead longer than I'd claimed, meaning he'd been with us, that he'd lured us all to that cursed cabin. That wasn't Cody, and it never was. The third story. Cameron Scott. Summer vacation was in full swing, so I decided to visit my cousins Tyler and Brady and spend a few days with them. I told my parents about my plans, and they were all for it. I packed up my stuff and got a ride from my dad, arriving at their place around 9 p.m. I met up with Tyler and Brady, we grabbed some dinner, and then we all crashed for the night. I ended up sharing a room with my cousins, and later that midnight I got up to use the bathroom. As I headed downstairs, everything felt off. It was pitch black, and I couldn't find the light switch without my flashlight, which I hadn't brought along. I was already a nervous 13-year-old who hated the dark, but I had no choice but to go. Then I heard a knock at the door. I asked, "Who's there?" but got no answer. The knock came again, and this time I was irritated. "Tyler, Brady, are you trying to freak me out? Back off or you'll be sorry." I wasn't in the mood for any jokes at that hour. After that, the knocking stopped. As I left the bathroom and headed back to sleep, I saw Tyler awake, so I asked, "Tyler, were you the one knocking?" He said, "Nope." I couldn't figure out why anyone would even be knocking at that time. If I really wanted to go to the bathroom, I'd have gone with my mom since I'm terrified of the dark. But Tyler suggested it might have been Dad. I grumbled, "Fine," and asked if anyone else could have done it. Maybe Brady? No way, Brady's only 5. "Must have been Dad then," Tyler said, and I just had to accept it. I told Tyler I wanted to sleep alone, so he pointed me to an extra room where I wouldn't be disturbed. I thanked him and went there, trying to settle down. But minutes later I felt a heavy pressure as if someone was sitting on my legs. Then I saw something I'll never forget. A white, creepy creature with a twisted figure staring right at me, its eyes completely hollow. Naturally, I screamed for help and bolted out of the room, with the creature hot on my heels like some wild animal, faster than I could run. It almost caught me, but I managed to jump down the stairs and fall, and everything around me went dark until I eventually blacked out. When I came to, it was already morning and everything seemed normal again. Tyler, Brady, and my aunt were all relieved to see me awake. My aunt explained she'd heard me screaming and saw someone running down the stairs when she came to check. I tried to play it off, saying it was just a bug that scared me, and apologized for causing a ruckus. "Don't worry, honey," she said, and we all sat down to a big, comforting breakfast, laughing and talking as if nothing had happened. Soon enough, it was time for me to head back home. Once I got home, I didn't mention anything to my parents about last night, because honestly, who would believe me? But I couldn't stop wondering what that creature was. After a long search online, I discovered it was called a rake, an immortal creature that stares at you before it kills you or someone in your family, a cursed sight that dooms you. I still don't know how I managed to escape its clutches, but I consider myself lucky. Then, 1 week later, my cousin Brady died suddenly, and I was completely shocked by how quickly it all went down. I asked Tyler what happened, and he told me that ever since I got back, Brady had been crying every night, repeating just one sentence: "The white monster is watching me." No one believed him. It all sounded like his imagination running wild, and then, just like that, he passed away. Coming back from Brady's funeral, I was convinced that it was the rake that had taken him. Smash that like button if you got scared, and leave a comment telling us which moment gave you chills. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not afraid. Choose one of the 2 videos on the screen to test your nerves. Boo!